My name is Ashley Baker. Welcome to the Transportation Lawyer Podcast. This podcast has been something that I have been thinking about doing for such a very long time, but I guess I didn't have the courage to do it until now. So, this is our first episode, and I want to spend this episode just telling you about why I'm doing this, because I think that's important to know as we start on this journey together. So first, a little bit about me. I am a transportation attorney. I have worked in both the trucking and the air transportation sectors. I am also a former long haul truck driver. I spent a lot of time over the road hauling both refrigerated and dry goods across the country for different shippers and receivers. And I love trucking. I absolutely love trucking. Um, I also taught over the road. I was a trainer over the road. I actually received an award for training. I was number one in my trainer class. So I guess valedictorian of training truck drivers, whatever. But after that, I went back to school. I wanted to do something else with my life, and so I said, "Hey, let's finish that bachelor's degree." So I went back to school, and I got two associate's degrees, one in philosophy, because I love to learn about how different ideas and the reasons behind why we do different things as human beings, especially it's especially important with law and regulations and stuff like that. So so I got that degree. I got another associate's degree in political science, and then I said, okay, let's go get that bachelor's degree. So I got a bachelor's degree in political science, pre-law. And it was during my studies of political science that I decided, let's go to law school. so, so fast forward. Um, I get through law school. Well, first of all, let's back up, because while I'm in law school, I'm inspired by one of my professors who wrote her own textbook on the laws of evidence, and I said, "Huh, I could write a book. I love to write. I've always liked to write. I've found that in school, I did the best in the classes where we had to write. So I always knew I was a writer. So I said, let's write a book. And I wrote a book, and I don't have it in front of me, but it'll be linked below, or also be placed right here. Ding. Okay, so I wrote my first book, which it was about the hours of service regulations. I felt, and I still feel, are kind of hard to understand. And after going through law school, so to even get into law school, like, you have to take the LSAT. The LSAT is like a logic games test, like, and you have to figure out all of these different scenarios. And I said, oh my God, the hours of service regulations are literally logic games. Because if you think about it, if you pick up a load here and then you have to drop it off here, but you can only drive this amount of time, and after so many hours you have to take a rest break, that's logic games. Okay? So I felt like if they use logic games to test whether you should be a lawyer, then maybe these rules are hard to understand, right? If I think as a law student at the time that these are like logic games. So I wrote a book about the hours of service. Each chapter addresses each rule, and it really breaks it down and gives you scenarios that a driver would face, because I wanted a person that had never driven a truck, never had any experience with the hours of service or trucking, to be able to read this book and understand it. So that was my first book. And then I wrote several books after that, which are also going to be linked in the description. But I said, we can do a little bit more, right? So after law school, I graduate. I decide that I want to focus on trucking. That's my background. That's what I've done. I think that for a truck driver or a trucking company, while any lawyer can provide excellent representation as far as being able to relate to the driver and what the driver did in a given situation, or how those, Department of Transportation regulations apply to a driver, the person I think in the best position to assess that practical application of that law is someone who's done it, who's had to do it. And that's me. That I want to go to get a master's degree in transportation. At the time, I didn't care where I was getting this master's degree, as long as it had to do with transportation. But then I say, you know what? Transportation is more than just trucking. And there are no master's degrees in trucking, which we need to change that, because trucking is a whole thing in itself. It touches so many areas of law, between regulations, personal injury law when there's an accident, contracts when you're trying to have these deals with third-party logistic companies or dispatchers or anyone else providing you a service in the transportation industry. So really, we do need to change that, and there does need to be a master's degree just dealing with the trucking industry, because there are 3 million trucks over the road. So why don't we have a degree that solely focuses on that, that's not engineering, teaching you how to construct and build roadways, or how to work on trucks and be a mechanic and things like that. So I digress. Let's pull back. Let's get back on track. So I get my master's degree. I ended up going to a school in New York, and I got it at a maritime school. And I also wanted to learn like the business of shipping more so. And so I have a master's degree in international transportation management from a maritime school. But what I think I can appreciate from the maritime school was that they didn't just focus on maritime, because you can't just focus on maritime. Anytime that you talk about transportation, you have to talk about every mode of transportation, because all of the modes work together to get our goods to us. Supply chain, right? So let's say hypothetically that you have a load of goods that you need to get from China, because that's where a lot of our stuff comes from China to Atlanta, right? The goods that you're trying to get here are so big that you have to send them by ship. But after they get off the ship, they have to go by truck, right? So that's two different modes of transportation. So they really all relate, right? Even with air transportation. So with air transportation, you can only get to so many places by plane, right? But on the flip side, if you think about it, you can get anywhere by plane. But as far as commercial transportation of goods, you have to be able to get whatever size aircraft that you're using to an airport that would support that size aircraft. Meaning the runway has to be correct, meaning the facilities for offloading those goods have to be correct. So if you're if you're trying to go to a place that does not have a large airport near you, then you're going to have a problem. And you're going to also have to go to a destination that's going to make you use a truck. So back to me telling you about my bio, because I got a little off track. So after I got my master's degree in transportation, well, that would be now, right? So right now I'm enrolled in an LLM program. And a LLM program is a Master of Laws. So it's like you get your Juris Doctor in law, and then you get your Master of Laws degree. If you want to, you don't have to do that to be a lawyer, but if you want to refine your skills and hone in on your craft, then that's an option to you. So we talked about that. Okay, let's talk about the importance of transportation, because it's important that for me that you all understand the importance of transportation. Transportation is so important. It's because our country will issue military strikes to defend it. If you've been following the news, you know of the issues in maritime with within the Middle East, within the Red Sea, that there have been attacks on different commercial vessels there, and in a response, the U.S. and I believe maybe a couple other countries have issued military strikes against those that are trying to attack commercial shipping. And I think that in itself shows you the importance of transportation to the global economy. So, the last thing I want to talk about is what we're going to do on this podcast. What is this podcast for? This podcast is to teach, to educate, because I believe that it is so important that a diversity of people are knowledgeable about transportation. There's so many rooms that I walk into, and I'm the only brown face in the room, and it does bother me. And so I want people to be encouraged that there's a place for them in transportation if they want to be, and it's not just trucking, right? We're also going to dispel some myths and rumors and things that hit the news that are not true, or we're going to explain why a thing that hits the news is the way it is. And so that is the point of me starting this podcast. I know you see this right here. That is the Transportation Law Dictionary. It's the book that I wrote. It's a dictionary that I wrote to help me through my master's program. When I was in school learning about maritime, getting my degree, I did not understand the language. And I think because I didn't understand the language of maritime, of other areas of transportation, that was the biggest barrier of entry to transportation for me. And so this book is what I have learned. This book is what I would have wanted to buy to help me through my master's program. This is what I would have wanted in my law library to get me through with law school too. And I hope that you all will hang in here with me on this journey. I have never, I've been a podcast host before and a producer of podcasts, never just had my own individual podcast by myself, talking about something that I absolutely love, which is transportation, obviously. So yeah, that is what we're going to do on this podcast. Any of the things that I mentioned during the course of this video will be linked below. If you have questions about transportation, please comment below your questions, and don't forget to like, and don't forget to subscribe,